I moved into a cabin in Appalachia just a few days ago. I thought it would be a peaceful place to settle down after graduating. I unpacked my boxes and felt excited about my new job at a local design firm. But something weird happened, and I can't shake it off. One afternoon while unpacking, I spotted the attic door. It creaked loudly as I opened it. I climbed up the narrow steps and the air was icy. In the corner, I found an old trunk covered in dust. I lifted the lid slowly. Inside were faded photographs of families. They looked happy, but their eyes followed me. It felt strange. I shrugged it off and put the pictures back. That night I tried to sleep, but I woke to soft humming. It was distant. I thought maybe I was imagining it. The next few days passed quietly, except for that humming. It got louder, especially when I looked at the photos. I felt uneasy, as if someone was watching me. I told myself it was just stress from my new job. Then, one evening, I was cooking dinner when I felt that strange chill again. My hair stood on end. I turned around, but nothing was there, just shadows lurking in the corners. I tried to laugh it off, but my heart raced. As I stirred the pot, I heard a giggle, or maybe a whisper. It came from the attic. My skin crawled. I didn't want to believe it. I forced myself to walk back up to the attic. The trunk stood open, and the photos were scattered everywhere. I picked one up. It was a family portrait, and the little girl looked just like someone I knew from my childhood. My breath caught in my throat. Had I met her? Just then I felt a strong chill down my spine. I whipped around, hoping to catch a glimpse of something. I thought I saw a shadow move, but when I looked, nothing was there. The walls creaked around me, and my heart pounded. I backed away, feeling uneasy. It hit me then. Maybe the families in those pictures still lived here in some way. Maybe they didn't want to leave. That night, I lay in bed trying to sleep. The humming grew more insistent. Then I heard a soft voice call my name. Mark. It echoed in my mind but wasn't aimed at me. I froze, unsure what to do. My heart raced and I could barely breathe. The shadows flickered around the room's edges. I whispered, "Who's there?" But silence answered me. I turned to look behind me. There was no one there. My skin prickled. I could still hear the humming, but it felt closer now. What was happening? My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. Was I losing it? Or was the cabin hiding something dark? I tucked my blankets close, hoping the night would pass uneventfully. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had invited something into my life, something I couldn't explain. I was in way over my head. The next morning, I awoke to an uneasy stillness. The humming had stopped, but it left a thick silence in its place. I rubbed my eyes and tried to gather my thoughts. I decided that maybe getting outside would help clear my head. After breakfast, I grabbed my jacket and stepped out into the crisp air. The sun shone brightly, and the forest surrounding my cabin seemed to come alive with rustling leaves and chirping birds. I thought maybe I'd go for a hike. I needed to shake off the strange occurrences. I walked down a narrow trail behind the cabin. The trees formed a thick canopy overhead. They swayed gently, but it felt as if they were watching me. I shook off the thought and kept moving. Just ahead, I spotted an old stone well. The structure looked abandoned, vines curling around the sides. Curiosity got the better of me. I approached the well, peering down into the dark hole. I felt a strange tug, almost as if something was calling me from within. My heart raced as I leaned closer. Suddenly I heard a splash below, startling me back. I must have imagined it. I decided to take a few photos of the well, wanting to capture something that might be seen later. As I snapped a few shots, I heard a giggle again. This time, it was clearer, more distinct. The sound echoed through the trees, and I froze. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky. No answer came. I felt a chill race through me, as if I'd just stepped into an ice-cold stream. I glanced around, searching for the source of the laughter, but only the wind replied. Feeling unnerved, I headed back to the cabin. As I walked, the leaves crunched beneath my feet, but the entire forest felt heavier today. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Back at the cabin, I tried to distract myself with work. I sat down at my desk, skimming through design plans. But I couldn't concentrate. The laughter kept replaying in my mind. Was it the little girl from the photo? I shook my head, trying to rationalize it. It was just my nervous imagination. Then my phone buzzed. It was a message from my colleague at the design firm. "Hey Mark, you want to check out the site later this week? I hear it's an old manor." I thought about it for a moment. Would it be worth it to see something different? I replied with a yes, hoping it would pull me out of this strange fog. That night, as I lay in bed, the humming returned. But it was softer now, like a lullaby. I tried to ignore it, but then the shadows began to swirl at the corners of my vision. I turned towards the attic door, still slightly ajar. Suddenly, I jolted awake. My phone vibrated with another message. I looked at the screen and my heart sank. The photo of the little girl was now my wallpaper. I never set it as anything. That's when I heard movement outside my door. Someone was in the house. I held my breath and listened intently. The soft scuffling noise was unmistakable, slow and deliberate. I sat up in bed, heart racing. My mind raced with possibilities. Had someone broken in? Was it the girl from the photo? My instinct screamed for me to stay quiet. I slipped out of bed and crept toward the door, tiptoeing across the cold wooden floor panels. The movement outside stopped, and an eerie silence filled the space. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear. There it was again, a faint giggle just beyond the wood. "What do you want?" I whispered, unsure if the words would even reach whoever was outside. Nothing answered. I gripped the doorknob, hesitating. Should I open it, or should I back away? Taking a deep breath, I twisted the knob and pulled the door open. The hallway was empty. The moonlight spilled into the cabin, illuminating the dust motes that danced around me. I peered into the darkened kitchen on my left. A shadow skittered past the window, and I jumped back, heart pounding. That's when I remembered the old stone well. My gut twisted as I recalled the giggle. I could feel a pull, as if something in the house was urging me to follow, to find whatever was behind that eerie laughter. It felt wrong, but curiosity got the better of my fear. I stepped into the hallway, moving toward the well outside. With each step into the night, the air grew heavier, the woods surrounding the cabin whispering secrets I couldn't understand. Moonlight sparkling through the trees illuminated the path. I arrived at the well, its stone face now looking more sinister than before. The once familiar sight felt altered in the dark. "Hello?" I called, mind racing with thoughts of the girl. I knew it was crazy, but I felt drawn to call out. I leaned over the edge of the well, peering into the darkness. "Is anyone down there?" Silence. But then I heard it again. The giggle. Closer this time. It sliced through the heavy air. My stomach dropped and I stepped back, heart pounding in my throat. I couldn't just stand there. I had to know what was going on. "Show yourself," I shouted, frustration mingling with fear. There was no answer, just the rustle of leaves in the wind. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up as if I was no longer alone. I turned around slowly. That's when I saw it. A shadow flitted between the trees, barely visible in the dim light. My heart raced. It was small, a figure that looked like a child. I wanted to call out, to chase after it, but a sense of dread gripped me. The forest felt alive yet hauntingly empty. I took a step back towards the cabin, but then the figure turned, revealing a small face framed by dark hair, the little girl from the photo. A scream caught in my throat as she smiled at me, her eyes glimmering like the stars above. There was something unsettling about her expression. Suddenly she pointed back into the woods. I felt a surge of urgency. Without thinking, I ran past the well, deeper into the forest, desperate to uncover the mystery, or maybe escape whatever was about to happen. But then everything went dark. The world around me faded, and I collapsed to the ground, trembling. I could still hear her laughter echoing in the distance. I blinked awake, heart still racing. But the laughter was gone. My surroundings were unfamiliar and hazy. I pushed myself up on my elbows, disoriented, and took a moment to collect my thoughts. The forest was thick around me, the trees towering like ancient giants, their branches twisting overhead. I could hear the faint rustle of leaves, but everything felt eerily still. A chill ran down my spine as I tried to remember how I got here. Had I fainted? The memory of the girl rushed back. Her ghostly smile, the way she pointed toward the dark woods. My instincts shouted for me to get up and run back to the cabin, but curiosity held me in place. "Hello?" I called out again, unsure who I was expecting to answer, and then faintly I heard it, an echo of that giggle drifting through the trees. It danced around me, teasing and taunting. My heart pounded louder in response. Instinctively, I grabbed a fallen branch as I rose to my feet. The woods were now shrouded in darkness, making my surroundings feel claustrophobic. I took a hesitant step forward, the path ahead barely visible beneath the canopy of branches. Suddenly, I saw movement. Faint, darting shapes among the trees. I squinted into the darkness as the leaves rustled. Was it just my mind playing tricks on me? I couldn't seem to shake the feeling of being watched. Then I felt it, a cold breath against the back of my neck. I froze. Fear coursed through me as I turned around slowly. Nobody was there, just the whisper of the wind. I forced myself to breathe, telling myself I was imagining things, but dread curled in my stomach. I turned to face the direction of the giggle, more determined now. It was like an invisible thread was pulling me deeper into the woods, and I had to know what was ahead. I moved cautiously, branches snapping underfoot. I strained to listen, searching for clues, but the laughter had faded to silence. That's when I saw a faint glow in the distance, a soft light flickering like a candle. Relief washed over me. Maybe there were others nearby. Maybe they would help. I picked up my pace, moving cautiously toward the light. As I got closer, the glow brightened. It was coming from a clearing up ahead, and I could make out the outline of small figures, children, dancing around a bonfire, their faces lit up with joy and laughter. My heart raced at the sight, but something felt off. The exhilaration in the air felt wrong, like a trap. "Are you okay?" I called out, a mix of hope and fear intertwining in my voice. The children stopped, turning to face me. Their expressions shifted, smiles vanishing as they looked between one another. Then the girl from the photo stepped forward, but she was different now, her smile chilling. "You came to play," she said, her voice sweet but laced with something darker. Something deep within me screamed to run, but I was rooted in place, caught in their gaze. The crackling fire cast uneasy shadows around them, and the laughter that had once seemed inviting now echoed like an ominous chant. Before I could gather my thoughts, the shadows around the clearing shifted, revealing more figures lurking behind the trees. My breath hitched. I stumbled back, heart pounding, and that dread came rushing back. The girl pointed at me again, her eyes narrowing. "Join us," she said, and the others began to move in closer. I could feel something sinister lurking beneath their innocent faces. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just a game. I turned and bolted back into the darkness, the laughter following me like a haunting echo. I had to escape. I didn't know what I was running from, but there was no way I was sticking around to find out. I sprinted through the forest, branches clawing at my arms and the ground uneven beneath my feet. I could still hear their laughter, echoing in the distance, growing fainter but more unsettling with every step I took. My breath came in quick gasps, and every rustle of leaves made me flinch. I didn't know where I was going, just away from that clearing, away from the eyes that seemed to bore into my back. Heart pounding, I stumbled through the dark, twisting between trees and underbrush, hoping to find the trail. It was as if the forest itself were alive, ensnaring me, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to know. Then, just as I thought I might have escaped, I caught a glimpse of movement to my right. I froze, eyes darting, and saw a flicker of white, like the girl's dress. Panic surged. My instincts roared at me to keep running, but I hesitated, trying to decipher what I saw. It was there again, a pale shape sliding between the trees. My heart sank. Was it just one of them? Or had they followed me? I took a cautious step toward the silhouette, curiosity battling with fear. "Hello?" I called, my voice barely louder than a whisper. The figure paused, then turned and, in a split second, dashed deeper into the shadows. It was gone before I could process what I'd just seen. I was tempted to chase after it, but the memories of those children and their chilling smiles flashed through my mind. I couldn't afford to be lured back into their trap. Instead, I turned back to the path I hoped I could find. I focused on my breathing, telling myself to just keep moving. I didn't realize how deep I had wandered into the woods until a shift in the air caught my attention. Everything grew still. The rustling leaves stopped, the wind held its breath, and for a moment I thought I might be alone. But then I heard it, a quiet rustle coming from the bushes nearby. It was too close for comfort. I took a few cautious steps back, hands trembling around the branch I still clutched. My heart raced as I listened intently. The sound grew louder, almost rhythmic, as if something was circling me. Suddenly, a figure stepped from the brush. This time, it wasn't a child. It was a tall man, his face obscured in shadows, but his eyes glimmered with something unsettling. "Lost, are we?" he said, his voice smooth but dripping with mockery. I stepped back, ready to sprint again, but he raised a hand. "Wait, don't run. I'm not here to hurt you. Not." "Who are you?" I demanded, heart hammering in my chest. I felt trapped, cornered in the dark. He smiled, and as he did, the air turned heavy with dread. "I'm just a friend." His voice was soothing, yet there was something about it that sent shivers down my spine. "But you shouldn't have ventured this far. They're drawn to you now." I glanced behind me, feeling the darkness encroaching. "Who's drawn to me?" He leaned in, the moonlight catching the edges of his features. "The children. They don't often let go once they have a plaything." I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could speak, the forest around us erupted with laughter. Their laughter. Shadows began to move again, creeping closer. "Run," he urged, his tone shifting to something urgent. "They won't stop until they have you." And just like that, the panic surged back. I dashed off into the darkness, guided only by the sound of my own pounding heart, but knowing that the real race was just beginning. I ran without looking back, branches scraping my arms as I pushed through the thick underbrush. The man's voice echoed in my mind. "They won't stop until they have you." I felt their laughter behind me like a dark wave, rising and crashing over me. I had no plan, just a primal instinct to survive. The uneven ground twisted beneath my feet and I stumbled again, hands out to steady myself. I had lost all sense of direction. It was just me and the trees, closing in as I ventured deeper into the forest. Then I heard it. Soft whispers mingling with the rustling of the leaves. My heart quickened. They were close. The laughter was no longer far away. It was right behind me, surrounding me. "Don't look back," I muttered to myself, but the urge was hard to fight. I caught a glimpse of white flitting through the shadows, and dread clawed at my insides. I didn't want to know if they were still after me. I turned sharply to my left, trying to cut through the underbrush, but it seemed to thicken the further I went. Panic surged again. I needed to find a way out. As I pushed through a tight thicket, I suddenly broke into a small clearing. My breath hitched as I saw it, a dilapidated hut, half sunken into the earth. The door hung ajar, creaking with every gust of wind. I didn't want to go inside, but nowhere felt safe, and the laughter grew louder with every second. I approached cautiously, glancing over my shoulder. The shadows didn't chase me anymore. They lingered just outside the tree line, watching. I stepped inside the hut, the damp air hitting me like a wall. Dust motes danced in the shafts of moonlight filtering through the cracks. The interior was a mess, broken furniture, shattered glass, cobwebs covering the walls. But something caught my eye in the back corner. An old, ornate mirror, its surface tarnished but still oddly reflective. I approached it, drawn in by an unexplainable urge. As I looked closer, I saw not just my reflection, but flickering images behind me. The children. Their faces were ghostly and distorted, pressing against the glass as if trying to break through. I stumbled back, heart racing. Just as I was about to run, the whispers grew frantic, and I heard a voice, sweet and taunting. "Come play with us," it beckoned, echoing in the silence of the hut. I whirled around, but the laughter was no longer distant. It was here now, filling the space, swirling around me. I had to escape. I bolted for the door, the echoing voices trailing behind me. Outside, I scanned the forest, deciding to head toward the sound of water. I remembered that often streams would lead to paths. I needed to find some kind of escape route. But then, I stopped. That laugh again, but closer now, a child's giggle, light and airy, almost sweet. But it was wrong, all wrong. "We're waiting," it called out, and with it came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, barefoot and quick, closing in. I ran, forcing my legs to move as the laughter crescendoed around me, the shadows deepening and stretching toward me as if they were alive. Just when I thought I might lose my mind from fear, I stumbled into a small stream that cut through the woods, the icy water shocking my senses. It was my chance. I strapped down my resolve and followed the stream upstream, heart hammering. The laughter faded slightly but lingered, buzzing against my ears like a persistent fly. I glanced back once more, half expecting to see them sprinting beside me. But instead the forest was silent again. Had they given up? I shook my head, refusing to believe it. That's when I saw it, something flickering in the water. It glimmered like a shard of glass, beckoning from beneath the current. As I reached for it, a chill ran up my spine. I knew I shouldn't, but my curiosity won. As I pulled it from the water, everything went dark. The world around me vanished, and in its place was a swirling vortex of shadows. All of a sudden I wasn't alone anymore. I gasped as the darkness enveloped me. It felt heavy, like a suffocating blanket pressing down from all sides. The whispering voices returned, swirling around me in a dizzying cacophony. But they were different now, more coherent. "Help us," a voice pleaded. "Join us," another echoed, softer yet insistent. Panic surged again. I could feel the pull of the shadows, like they were trying to drag me into their depths. I squeezed my eyes shut, afraid of what I might see, wishing I could wake from this nightmare, but when I opened them, I stood in a different place entirely. I blinked hard, disoriented. Gone was the forest and the stream. In its place was a dimly lit room, walls lined with worn wallpaper faded from time. It smelled musty, like something long abandoned. The only light came from a flickering candle set atop an old wooden table. I turned in a circle, heart racing. This wasn't just an illusion. I could feel the cool air, could hear the creak of the floorboards beneath me. Before I could consider my next move, a chill swept through the room. I froze as whispers began to echo again, and the voices seemed to seep from the walls. "Find us," they urged in unison. "Save us." I stumbled backward, jamming my back into the wall. I was trapped. Had I stepped into a different realm? Was this the fate they had wanted for me all along? Focusing, I took a deep breath and tried to calm my racing heart. I needed to think clearly. Then I saw them. Shadowy figures emerged from the corners of the room, their outlines barely discernible. They stood still, watching me with hollow eyes. For a moment I felt like prey, but as I looked closer, something shifted. Their faces began to appear. Wide eyes, open mouths, silently crying out. I recognized them. They were the same children from the mirror. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, voice trembling. One of the figures stepped forward, glancing at the candle flickering on the table. "Help us find what was lost," it whispered, its voice a fragile echo. "You must discover the truth." The others murmured in agreement, their voices blending into a haunting chorus. I cocked my head, trying to understand. "What truth?" I pressed, grappling with confusion. But before I could get an answer, the ground beneath me trembled, the floorboards rattled, and a loud crash resonated from somewhere beyond the room. My fight-or-flight instinct kicked in, but I felt anchored to the spot. What did that noise mean? Suddenly the figures shrank away into the shadows, their pleading eyes locking onto mine. "Face what waits," they urged, before disappearing completely, leaving me alone with my racing heart and the fading light of the candle. That's when I heard it again. A low growl mixed with the sound of footsteps approaching. This time, they weren't just whispers. Something else was coming toward me. I could feel the dread clawing at my insides. I had to move. But where? The door behind me creaked open, revealing a deeper darkness. I had a choice to make: flee into the abyss or face whatever awaited me in the shadows. The growl grew louder, sending chills racing down my spine. I took a step forward, driven by a determination I barely understood. "Let's find out what waits," I whispered, steeling myself against the unknown. The moment I stepped through the door, the air grew thick with an electric tension. I found myself in a narrow corridor, dimly lit by flickering light bulbs hanging from rusty wires. The walls were painted a sickly shade of green, peeling in places, as if some long-forgotten sadness seeped from the very structure. I hesitated, the whispers lingering like a distant echo in my mind. Now I could hear the growl more clearly. It reverberated through the hall, low and menacing. That's when I heard it. A soft, scuttling noise coming from the darkness ahead, punctuated by the unmistakable sound of breathing. Someone, or something, was waiting for me. My heart raced as I moved forward cautiously. Each step was accompanied by the creaking of the floor beneath my feet, like the house itself was protesting my presence. I felt drawn to a door at the end of the corridor, its surface scratched and warped. It held a certain gravity, as if it hid an answer just beyond its threshold. Then I noticed it, a faint light flickering under the door, pulsating in time with my heartbeat. It felt inviting yet ominous at the same time. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cool handle, and paused. I hadn't forgotten about the shadows or the children's voices. They were itching at the back of my mind, reminding me of my purpose. Taking a breath, I twisted the knob and pushed the door open. Inside was a small room cluttered with dusty furniture and odd trinkets. A large mirror hung on one wall, its surface clouded but reflecting a glimmer of light. In the center of the room stood a table strewn with old papers, faded photos, and a few glass jars. Each item was covered in a thick layer of dust, but one jar caught my eye, its contents shifting slightly, as if aware of my gaze. I stepped closer, my curiosity piqued. The jar was filled with something dark, swirling like smoke. Beneath it, a label read, "Remain Nameless." I frowned, feeling a chill crawl up my spine. What did that mean? I suddenly recalled the children's faces and wondered if this was what they wanted me to find. But the growling hadn't ceased. It now sounded closer, almost right behind me. I turned, a rush of panic flooding through me. The room seemed to shift, shadows gathering at the edges, tightening. The growling morphed into a low, furious snarl, vibrating through the air. "Who are you?" I demanded, voice trembling but defiant. "What do you want?" In that instant, a frigid draft swept through the room, and the mirror flashed briefly before my eyes. I thought I saw faces, distorted, pleading, and familiar. My breath caught in my throat. I had to make a decision. Would I confront whatever lurked behind me in the shadows, or would I search the room for more clues about the truth the lost children spoke of? I hesitated. Inside me, a war raged. I wanted to escape, but I felt drawn to the secrets waiting to be uncovered. Before I could act, the growl erupted into a deafening roar. The shadows lunged forward. My instincts kicked in, and I had no choice but to dive for the mirror as everything went dark. Would this bring me closer to answers or deeper into the nightmare? When I plunged into the darkness, it felt like I was falling into a bottomless pit. I braced for impact, but instead found myself tumbling onto a cold, hard surface. Disoriented, I blinked against the sudden brightness that engulfed me. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust. I was no longer in the room with the mirror. Instead, I found myself in a vast, open space that resembled an old hall. Dust motes danced in the light pouring from cracked windows high above. Tables lined the walls, covered with more jars like the one I'd left behind. Each contained something alive, swirling in shadow and mist, just like before. Anxiety gripped me. I was still entangled in this eerie realm. I staggered to my feet, heart hammering. The snarl from before echoed around the hall, amplifying my fear. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to confront a shadow beast. But all I saw were scattered relics of a forgotten time, old toys, faded wallpaper, and tattered curtains that flapped softly in a non-existent breeze. "Is anyone here?" I called into the emptiness. My voice bounced back, swallowed by the stillness. Silence pressed down like a weight on my chest. As I moved deeper into the hall, I caught sight of a figure toward the far end, a small child, perhaps, darting behind an old wooden pillar. My heart lightened momentarily. Could it be one of the lost children? I stepped forward, calling out again, "Wait, I'm here to help." The figure glanced back, eyes wide with what seemed like fear. Then it vanished into the shadows. My stomach dropped. Was I too late? Suddenly I was struck by a realization. The growling noise had shifted. It became a low, anguished wail, resonating from the depths of the hall. I knew I couldn't stand still, rooted by my fear. I moved toward the last place I'd seen the child, but the ground began to tremble beneath me, causing me to stumble. From beneath the floor, I heard whispers. They felt familiar, like the children's voices from before, calling my name, pleading for my attention. The air thickened around me, and I froze at the sound of footsteps echoing behind me. My breath hitched as I turned slowly, expecting the worst. Instead, I saw a door starting to creak open at the end of the hallway. A figure emerged, silhouetted against the glare behind it. "Stay back!" I cried, instinctively taking a step backward. The figure paused, then stepped fully into the light. It was a woman, her face gaunt and eyes sunken, mirroring the lost desperation of those children. "I know why you're here," she said, her voice raspy, "and I can show you the truth, but it won't be easy." She extended her hand toward me, beckoning. My instinct screamed to run, yet I felt inexplicably drawn to her. The whispers intensified, urging me on. I had come too far to back down now. I hesitated only a heartbeat before taking a step toward her. But just as I reached out, the walls of the hall trembled again, and a cacophony of growls enveloped me. The moment was shattered, leaving me with a choice: to follow the woman, risking whatever horrors lay ahead, or retreat to the darkness that had already swallowed me. Before I could make my decision, I heard the unmistakable sound of scuttling again, much closer this time. I turned, eyes wide, realizing the lurking presence was not a single threat, but a multitude emerging from the shadows. I was not alone in this twisted space. The growling swelled around me, a threatening symphony that drove adrenaline through my veins. I stood paralyzed, caught between the woman's eerie beckoning and the all-consuming shadows gathering behind me. Fear clawed at my insides, blending with an insatiable curiosity. I could almost hear the whispers of the children urging me toward the woman. Help us. Find the truth. They echoed in my mind, woven into the very fabric of this place. Slowly, the figure of the woman materialized before me in stark clarity. Her outstretched hand, trembling yet resolute, seemed to hold the promise of answers I desperately needed. But behind me, I could feel the presence of more than just shadows. They were hungry shapes, ethereal and evasive, yet unmistakably real. With every instinct screaming to flee, I made my choice. I stepped forward, grasping the woman's hand tightly. In that moment, the noise behind me turned into a frenzy, a swarm of whispers turned sinister. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for whatever horror might ensue. The world shifted like a kaleidoscope. I was pulled through a tunnel of darkness, flashes of light piercing through the void around me. All at once, we tumbled out into a dimly lit room, starkly different from the hallway. A chill ran up my spine as I recognized features familiar to me, the furniture, the cold stone walls, the reflection of what lay beyond. We stood at the epicenter of a storm. Not just the shadows I had been fleeing, but memories, echoes of lost children, swirling around like autumn leaves caught in a whirlwind. They looked toward me with eyes filled with yearning, their faces reflecting longing and despair. "Help us. Please," they pleaded, their voices intermingling, amplifying the urgency. I stood at the heart of their entrapment, realizing the weight of their innocence clung to the air. "How do I help you?" I shouted, desperation rising with every glance at their outstretched hands. The woman beside me turned, her solemn eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. "You must face the truth of what happened here. It is the only way to break the bond, to set them free." A deep growl reverberated through the shadows, swirling in a chaotic dance around us. I felt it scrape at the edges of my mind, threatening my resolve. "But what truth?" I asked, panic rising. "What do I need to uncover?" "The past is not easy to bear," she replied evenly, her voice steadying me. "But it binds these children to this place. Only by confronting the pain can they go free." Suddenly, memories washed over me. Images of joyous laughter, holiday gatherings, then slowing, morphing into darker shades, emptiness, loss, crying parents frantically searching, faces twisted in grief. I clutched my head as the emotional onslaught crashed around me. Then a memory surfaced, a vision of the stone well, kids playing nearby, laughter filling the air, an echo of innocence. I managed to piece together a revelation. "It was the well," I said breathlessly. "That's where it happened." As if manipulating its own narrative, the darkness groaned, shadows shifting in agitation. An overwhelming sense of dread flooded me, but with determination I pressed on. If that was the link, then I'd follow it to its chilling end and confront whatever lay beneath the surface of that well. "Let me go," I said, looking at the woman and the gathered children. "I'll face it." "Beware," she warned. The shadows writhed around her. "It demands a price for the truth." I could feel every child's gaze boring into me, a desperate plea for liberation. The weight of their fate pressed down on my shoulders, empowering me with purpose. "I'll do it," I promised, somehow certain my choice would lead to their release or my demise. In an instant, I was back in the woods, the air thickening with echoes of a forgotten time. The path to the well stood before me, shrouded in darkness and silence. My heart raced, but I turned to confront whatever awaited me. I felt it in my bones. The truth would not be pretty, but it was necessary. I approached the well, the cold stone beckoning like a grave marker. The laughter wove through the trees, drawing closer, louder. I peered into the depths, blackness swirling like a storm, concealing the consequences of play and innocence. "Show yourself!" I bellowed into the darkness, willing the specter's wrath to manifest, and then came a whisper. "You shouldn't have come." Suddenly, a pull tugged at me, and I could feel darkness begin to creep up from the well, wrapping around my legs. It felt alive, hungry, waiting to engulf me. My pulse quickened. Within the suffocating shadows, I sensed those lost children, their laughter fading into the depths, echoing demands for freedom. I tensed, preparing to confront whatever horror awaited. A sudden flicker of light ignited the darkness, illuminating the well's edge and showing me fleeting images of the children, their faces contorted in pain. They were angry, ethereal remnants yearning for release. In that moment, courage surged through me. "I'm here," I shouted into the blackness. "You won't trap me in your darkness." The shadows recoiled, the laughter peaked in pitch before turning to cries, echoing down the well in a cacophony of sorrow. As desperation set into their echoes, I felt the pull weaken. With all my might, I reached into the depths, my voice commanding yet vulnerable, "Let them go." But just before the darkness could yield, everything faded again, a blur of color, of light, of darkness swirling behind my eyelids. And in an instant, silence swallowed me whole. I opened my eyes to find myself lying in the clearing. The sun filtered through the trees. The world felt eerily calm. Standing slowly, I glanced around, anxiety washing over me. Had it worked? Was the nightmare over? But deep down, I could feel an unfamiliar weight thrumming beneath the surface of my thoughts. The children's faces remained etched in my memory, shadows lurking on the edges of my vision. I stood alone, the well now an ordinary hole in the ground before me. All I could hear were the faint rustles of leaves above, but with it came the darkness that lingered in my mind. Quiet uncertainty shadowing my steps. Where were they? Had I released them, or was there a deeper truth still hidden in the whispering forest? As I stepped away from the well, uncertainty prickled through me. I wondered if I'd shaken the weight of shadows, or if their echoes would forever follow. I knew I had faced something, but the season of loss left its residue. The laughter still whispered in the rustle of the trees, the shadows never fully relinquishing their hold. I took a deep breath and set out toward the path leading out of the woods. I felt changed but not yet free. There would be no neat resolution, no clear answers. The truth lingered just out of reach, and I carried their weight with every step, forever reflecting on the invisible boundary between the known and the unknown, a tension lingering between the realms of light and shadows.